Good evening, everybody. My name is Catherine Corey, and I teach in the theater program here at NYU Abu Dhabi, and on behalf of the NYU Abu Dhabi Arts Center and the NYU Abu Dhabi Institute, I welcome you to this evening with Maysoon Zayid. Very excited that she's here, personally. Yes. Maysson is here as part of a residency in the NYU Abu Dhabi Arts Center, which, if you haven't had the pleasure of attending programming at the Arts Center, I insist that you pick up a brochure on your way out. You won't believe the diversity of programming there. It's absolutely wonderful. And Maysson will be performing there tomorrow night and the night after. Tomorrow night in Arabic and the night after in English. How cool is that? I also want to give a shout out to the NYU Abu Dhabi Institute, with whom I've been working for several years with great pleasure. The programming is also diverse, very, very interesting, and diverse in terms of subject, everything from the sciences to theater to music. They do it all. And my last shout out before I do my introduction of Maysson is to Studio XY, right here on campus, who, how do we say it, made her even more beautiful for you. Okay. So, Maysoon Zayid is an actress, comedian, disability advocate, and writer. She is a graduate of and a guest comedian in residence at Arizona State University. Maysson is the co-founder, co-executive producer of the New York Arab American Comedy Festival, oh yeah, and the Muslim Funny Fest. She was a full-time on-air contributor to Countdown with Keith Olbermann and a columnist for the Daily Beast. She has most recently appeared on Oprah Winfrey Networks in Deep Shift, 60 Minutes, and ABC News. Maysson had the #1 TED Talk of 2014 and was named one of 100 women of 2015 by the BBC. As a professional comedian, Maysson has performed in top New York clubs and has toured extensively at home and abroad. She was a headliner on Arabs Gone Wild comedy tour and the Muslims Are Coming tour. Maysson appeared alongside Adam Sandler in You Don't Mess with the Zohan and has written for Vice. She walked in New York Fashion Week and is proud to be an ambassador for Cara Ross's Unleashed. Maysson is currently developing a comedy series with Hazy Mills Productions called If I Can. Please welcome Maysoon Zayid.
All right. Give it up for Catherine Corey. Okay. By round of applause, who's never seen me before? This is raising your hand. This is round of applause. Yalla, one more time. By round of applause, who's never seen me before? Okay, this is good. All right. So my name is Maysoon Zayid, and I am not drunk. But the doctor who delivered me was Yusuf Amra. So as a result, I have something called cerebral palsy. Does anyone else have cerebral palsy? Anyone? Do you? Because you have to leave if you do. I like being the only special one. Okay? For those of you who don't know what cerebral palsy is, in my case, it means I shake all the time. So I'm a little bit Shakira, and also a little bit Muhammad Ali. And I don't want anyone in this room to ever feel bad for me, because I got 99 problems and palsy is just one. In the Oppression Olympics, I would win a gold medal. I'm Palestinian, I'm Muslim, I'm a woman of color, I'm disabled, and Donald Trump is my president. If you don't feel better about yourself, maybe you should. I want to tell you guys a little bit about my background, because I think it's important that you know where I come from. My father is Al-Hajj Musa Zayed. Zayed's like a popular name here, so rock on. And my mother is a Doctora Rebhiya Sobah. My mom looks like Julia Roberts, and my father looks like Saddam Hussein. And the way that they met is absolutely beautiful. It's such an incredible love story, and I like to share it because when people think of Palestinian or when people think of Muslims, they don't think of romance, they think of rocks. So I like to talk about how my parents met. They're first cousins. Yeah, my father swears that the first time he saw my mother, he knew she was the one. And I was like, Daddy, how did you know she was the one? And he said, your grandfather, he told me. And then my mother, she has a cute pet name for my dad. She calls him her husband. And when I was born, I was the youngest of 4 girls. And my parents didn't think that God would be so great as to bless them with another female child. So when I was born, they had only picked a name for a boy. Very original name, you've probably never heard it. They were going to name me Muhammad. When they saw I was a girl, they decided to name me Muhammadiyah, the female version of the name Muhammad. Now, Muhammad is a great name. It's the name of a prophet. Being named Muhammadiyah is like being named Smurfette. Luckily, the doctors told my parents I was gonna drop dead, and they didn't want to waste such a great name on a dead baby. So instead, they named me Maysoon. Where are my Arabic speakers? Clap if you speak Arabic. Who knows what Maysoon means? Don't say warda. That's what they always say when no one knows what an Arabic name means. They're like, it's a beautiful flower. It means beautiful flower. I'm like, no. Maysoon means lemur, a little monkey with giant eyes. So my parents named their shaking, disabled, brown, hairy baby monkey, and I survived, alhamdulillah. Another thing that the doctors told my parents was that I would never walk. Now, let me be crystal clear. There is absolutely no shame in not walking or using any mobility device you need. A mobility device can be anything. It can be a wheelchair, it can be a cane, it can be a walker, it can be a group of men carrying me on a big gold mattress throughout the city. Whatever it is that helps you feel more independent is what you should do and what you should use. But when I was growing up, my father was aware that I was going to be spending half my life in the United States and half my life in Palestine. So it was very important for him to teach me how to walk. And he had a mantra, and his mantra was, you can do it, yes you can. And he had 2 different ways for teaching me. The first was he would place my feet on his feet and he would just walk. I walked miles on that man's shoes. Or since it's Abu Dhabi, I walked kilometers on that man's shoes. His second technique was to dangle a dollar bill in front of me and have me chase it. My inner stripper was so strong that I was running in stilettos by kindergarten. My parents treated me exactly the same way that they treated my sisters. I was equal in every way. So if they were required to get A's at school, I was required to get A's at school. If they were helping my mom and dad clean, I too had to clean. And I remember the first time I ever played the disability card. The disability card is when you use your disability to get out of stuff you don't want to do. And my mother was like, it's time to clean. And I said, Mommy, I can't clean. I'm disabled. And she said, oh, yes, you can. And she put a towel under my butt and had me go and do the entire kitchen floor like this. In addition to my parents treating me equally, my parents had to fight for me. When I entered school in the United States at the age of 5, the superintendent informed my parents that I would not be allowed to go to the same public school as my sisters. They decided that they would send me to a school for children with Down syndrome. The assumption was that if you had a physical disability, you also had an intellectual disability. So my parents had to fight for me. And I will never forget the day my father marched me into the principal's office, my feet on his feet, and he stood up and he said, "Mr. Kalagraki, in the name of Allah, if you send her to the special school, I will suit you." Now, I am not quite sure if Mr. Calagreco thought my father had just threatened to shoot him, but I know that when an angry Arab man walks into your office with his disabled daughter on his toes, invoking the name of Allah, you better listen. So I went to public school. And if I had not gone to public school, I would not be here at the Institute giving this talk right now. Education is the key to power, and we must ensure that anywhere on earth, and especially in the Arab world, that people with disabilities, regardless of whether it's physical or intellectual, have an equal right to education. Technology has become our friend. The internet has freed so many people who had no way to communicate, who had no access to an extremely inaccessible world before. People with disabilities who were nonverbal can now write entire blogs, can communicate what is happening in their mind, can relay the message that they are not infantile and that we are equal. But unfortunately, the internet also has a dark side. I grew up in New Jersey. It's a town, and my town was extremely diverse. There were 33,000 Italian Catholics and 6 Arabs who were all my family. Now the town has changed a lot. Now there's 33,000 Arabs and 33,000 Italian Catholics and 20 Arabs who are still all my family. But I was never bullied. I was never made fun of. I was never treated as an other. The word Muslim wasn't a slur used by a desperate orange politician who wanted to gain points. My friends would take me to midnight mass and they would show me off and they would say, "She's from where Jesus is from." And I would say, "I'm from New Jersey." And when I grew up, I had a dream. And my dream was to be on a musalsal, a soap opera. And my parents had told me to dream big, and I did. And I went to college to pursue my dream, which brings me to the next topic, dreaming big. We in the Arab world, whether born here or imported, have a problem with dreaming big. So I'm here to tell you, dream big and have no fear. Don't worry about what other people think of your dream. If they think that you can't achieve it, if they think that it's silly, if they think that it's dangerous, it's not their dream. Don't let anyone dictate where you are going. And if your dream turns into a nightmare, find another dream. It's okay. You don't have to keep hanging on to it. My dream was to become an actress. But when I turned on American television, I realized something. And what I realized was people with disabilities were missing from media, whether it was film, television, or news. We are the largest minority in the world, and by far the most underrepresented in media. And there's a saying in the States, we say, if you can't see it, you can't be it. There is a large amount of fear surrounding disability. People are afraid that they might join us one day because we are, by far, the coolest group in the world. You can join at any time, whether you want to or not. There's no admission fee. It doesn't matter what race, religion, gender, orientation, or economic class you are. We welcome you all. And this apparently terrifies people. And another thing that terrifies people is the idea of having a disabled child. I always say to parents before they become parents, I always say to young couples, don't get pregnant if you're not ready to have a disabled child. We are not unnatural. We are not an anomaly. We are 1/5 of the population. And people need to not fear us. What's the first thing that you say when you see someone who's pregnant? You say, inshallah, it's healthy. And of course, you do want them to be healthy. But being disabled is not the equivalent of being unhealthy. Most people want me to be cured far more than I want myself to be cured. Having cerebral palsy is part of who I am. And shaking all the time burns a massive amount of calories. So it's not as bad as you think. Also, at some point, every single one of you in this room has dreamt of being disabled. Oh, yes, you have. Come on a journey with me. It's Zayed. You're driving around. You're looking for parking. And what do you see? 100 empty handicap spaces. And you're like, God, can't I just be a little disabled? Like, by the way, I found a place in Abu Dhabi that can heal me. Have you guys seen this leaning tower? You know about the Leaning Tower? I think it's like a Hyatt hotel. It's Mail. It's like really leaning, and I went into it, and I was straight. Wallah, if I live there, I'll be healed. But as I said, I have 99 problems, and palsy is just one. And the other universal issue is being a woman. First of all, we in the Arab world, as women, need to start showing solidarity. Those of us who don't cover our hair judge those of us who do cover our hair. Those of us who do cover our hair sometimes judge those of us who don't cover our hair. So I have 2 suggestions. Number 1, mind your own deen. You understand? That means don't come and haram police me. Pay attention to your own religion, worry about your own salvation, and I'll worry about mine. To be honest, I have a one-way ticket to heaven. In Islam, we believe that if you help disabled people, you get points. They're called hasanat. I help disabled people every single day. I brush my teeth, I brush my hair, I get dressed. I'm going to heaven, people. Have you guys heard about the haram police? The haram police exist on Facebook. The haram police are people who police your Facebook posts and come on to tell you that you are going to hell. I happen to love Christmas. I'm a Christmas-loving Muslim. I have to. I'm Palestinian, and as we discussed, Jesus is from Palestine, much like me. And so I wrote on Facebook about how excited I was about Christmas. And this woman named Fatma came on my page and she said, Maysoon, I love you very much. I believe this is Fatma's accent, but she could be from Peru, who knows? And she said, but this kermesing that you insist on doing is gonna make you go straight to hell. And I was like, but Fatma, you know, Jesus is a prophet in Islam, and like I'm clear about who his father is or isn't, depending on your faith, you know. So I don't really think I'm going to hell for getting a couple of gifts. And she was like, Maysoon, this is not funny. You must stop kermesing. And so I was like, listen, Fatma, let's change the subject just for a second. How's your husband's liquor store doing? And she said, without missing a beat, Alhamdulillah, we're so busy because of Christmas. Violence against women is acceptable. It's excused. 25% of women worldwide, regardless of if you're in America, South America, Africa, or the Middle East, 25% of women will experience violence in their lifetime. That number is tripled if a person has a disability. People with disabilities face an enormous amount of violence. It has gotten so rampant that there is actually a day of mourning worldwide for people with disabilities who have been killed by their caretakers. And we are the only children whose murders are excused. When a woman or a man murders their disabled child, the news stories that follow say things like, she was at the end of her rope, they didn't have community support, or the one that horrifies me the most, that child is better off dead. We are not better off dead. We are better off being treated as equals. That means in your business place, you must employ people with disabilities, and you must make sure that not only are they employed, but that they have access to everything they need to do their job correctly. I am not a comedian because I have a disability. I'm a comedian who happens to have a disability. The talent exists, the knowledge exists, but the accessibility does not exist. It goes beyond having ramps. It's great to have a ramp, but if I have cerebral palsy and you put me on a ramp, I roll right down it. So what's accessible for one person is not necessarily accessible for another. Every single event you should do, and NYU, I'm not here to shame you, I'm just here to teach you. Every single event you do should have an interpreter at all times. You should have an interpreter for the deaf. The assumption is there are no deaf people in this room, but we do not know that. There could be someone who's hard of hearing, there could be someone who's deaf. You have the choice of having a sign language interpreter or having live captioning at every single event you do. If you create content online, if you create videos, YouTubes, anything online, always open caption it. The closed captions don't understand most people, so you have to open caption it so that, again, your work is accessible to everyone. If you're a builder, an architect, a person who creates space, make sure that the spaces that you create are designed accessibly and that it's not an afterthought and something that you think of later in the game when it's too late and too expensive. Make everything accessible, assuming one of two things, that someone with a disability may use it and that you may be disabled one day. I'm not going to say la samahallah because it's a 25% chance, and we need to start being realistic about it and stop dealing with it as something we fear. And one of the best ways I think we can do that is by having more positive images of disability in media. We need more anchors on the news that are either blind or deaf or have some sort of disability. We need children's programming to include people with disabilities. Sesame Street has been on television for 40 years. This year was the first time they had a disabled Muppet. Her name is Julia, and she has autism. Do you guys know who Dora the Explorer is? Clap if you know Dora. Oh, this is good. Here's my thought about Dora the Explorer. She has a friend named Swiper. Swiper is a fox who steals stuff. And then Dora says, Swiper, no swiping. What if we chop his arm off and make him an amputee so that kids aren't scared of people missing appendages? The Arab world is horrified because that would actually happen to Swiper here. I understand. In America, it's a hell of a joke, but here you were like, yes, Swiper should definitely have his arms chopped off. I see. I'm going to put that one in my pocket. So being a Muslim woman is really interesting. And as I mentioned before, right now in America, we have an orange nightmare in charge of us. I have a bunch of names for him, but unfortunately none of them are appropriate for this setting. So if you would like to hear me curse at him, please go online to Maysoon.com and you can hear all my special names. But as a result, what has happened is Muslims in America are facing a massive amount of bigotry, hate, and violence. And Muslims worldwide are on the forefront of violence from terrorism, violence from bigotry, violence from each other. But in America, my life has completely changed. Since July 15th of 2017, I have gotten death threats daily. Every single day, because the idea that Muslims are not American, that we're terrorists, that we're performing something called taqiyya. Now, I didn't know what taqiyya was until I got accused of it. And I was like, taqiyya? I like a good hat. And apparently, Taqiyya is when Muslims pretend to be good and then they cut your head off. So I was like, I don't have that kind of coordination, but they didn't really listen to me. So right now, women who wear hijab in America are at the forefront of violence. I can walk down the street and they don't know that I'm Muslim. I mean, look at me. I could easily be the lost Kardashian. But my sisters in America who are brave enough to choose to wear hijab can't hide who they are, nor do they want to hide who they are. So I know that although we are equal, they are at the forefront of violence. And that's why I support anything a woman chooses to wear. The word that's most important in that sentence is choice. If you choose to wear a bikini, bravo alayk. If you choose to wear a burqa, I'm gonna clap for you too. Burqa to bikini, as long as it's your choice, I am with you. Let women control their bodies. Let women control their fate. And I remind you once again, mind your own deen. Which brings me to Palestine. I grew up in the great state of New Jersey, and every single summer when my friends would go down the shore, my parents would send me to live in a war because they were afraid that if I didn't go to Palestine every single year, I would grow up to be Britney Spears and I would forget my roots. So every year my parents would send us back to Palestine, and I loved going back there as a child because it was wedding season. See, everyone from my village, Derdewan, they all live in America. And every summer, they gather their children of marrying age, and they send them back to Palestine to get married. So the men are like 27, 28, 29. The women are like 18, 19. They put them in a circle, the men on the outside, the women on the inside, and they have them dance around to Win Aramallah, Win Aramallah. And wherever the circle stops, that's who you're marrying. So my cousin Khalid the other day saw who was across from him, and he was like, oh, no way. And his dad was like, shoo, no way. This is your nasib. You have to marry her. And he was like, Dad, I can't. And he was like, oh, yes, you can, and you gonna. And my cousin was like, she's my sister. So we had to reset the whole circle. So when I turned 33, I decided to catch a husband. And I know this is shocking to a lot of people because the myth is that people with disabilities are eternal, happy, sunshine babies, and that we never grow up, we never get married, we don't have thoughts, and we don't have emotions. This is not true. People with disabilities have every right to get married, and they have every right to have children. It is not your business to tell someone with a genetic disorder or any hereditary disability that they don't have a right to have children. This world is not better if we don't have people with Down syndrome or don't have little people or don't have people with any other disability. We exist and we add to this world. And just because it's not for you doesn't mean that they can't be great parents with great children. I happen to be very lucky in that my disability is not genetic, and a bonus, I can't have kids, so I don't have to deal with any of this. Instead, I have a cat, and her name is Beyonce, and we're gonna talk about her shortly. So, at the age of 33, I decided to catch a husband because it was my Jesus year, and I either had to get married or martyred. And I decided that I would get married because I had been a bridesmaid 17 times. And I had spent $28,000 on my wedding. I had spent $28,000 being a bridesmaid. That's like 60,000 dirham. And I wanted to make my money back, right? So I needed to catch a husband, not because I was desperate. If I could have married white, I would have married this guy named Mike. But my father said that if I didn't marry a Palestinian, he would throw himself off of a bridge. So I needed to find a Palestinian. And I couldn't do what my parents did because I am way too disabled to inbreed. This is the part of the conversation where I tell you, say no to cousin love. The #1 cause of disability in the Arab world is cousins marrying. It was okay to marry your cousin when you had to ride a camel for 6 weeks to find someone you weren't related to. Now we have Nasib.com. Fix yourselves. Now, I couldn't go on Nasib.com because typing's not my thing. So, do you guys want to know where I found my husband? Do you want to know where I found my husband? I went to Gaza. And the reason I went to Gaza is because they got no place to run. Yep. I framed my American passport in a big gold frame, and I walked through that refugee camp going, "You want a visa, baby?" And my husband was like, "Yeah." So I'm like, "Pack up your stuff, let's go." And he's like, "I have no stuff." So I pack him up, I bring him back to America, I get to America, and I immediately have buyer's remorse because I remember him being taller and having 2 eyebrows. So I didn't want to hurt his feelings, so I went up to him and I was like, "Habibi, in America we have 2 eyebrows." And he goes, "You know when I'm gonna have 2 eyebrows? I'm gonna have 2 eyebrows when there'll be 2 states. Yani no settlement freezing means no eyebrow tweezing." Okay, so I just shaved it when he was asleep. Now he has 1 on 1 side. Teaches you, listen to me. So on my wedding, I was really excited, not for what you think, Mo Sachjim. I saw you, yellow shirt, I saw that. I was really excited because when you're a bridesmaid 17 times and you're single, they make you catch a bouquet. And like catching is not my thing. So I would walk out on the dance floor and be like, "It's not bad enough I'm single, you have to throw stuff at me." So at my wedding, instead of throwing it backwards, I threw the flowers forward because even though I'm Palsi, I'm not good at catching. I'm Palestinian, I'm really good at throwing stuff. I took out 7 bridesmaids in 1 shot. I was like, "Jihad!" And they were gone. Anyway, back to marriage. I have a really good marriage, say mashallah, because I know how to solve conflicts. And what I do is I lovingly look at my husband, who I call Chefugee, because he's a refugee and a chef, so he's a Chefugee. And anytime we have a fight, I look at him with like so much love and I say, "Do you want to go back? You want to go back to Gaza? There's no Dunkin' Donuts in Gaza." Where are my single people at? Clap, clap. Married people. Single. Married. Single. Married. Divorced. Always the happiest people in the room. Always. We in the Middle East are obsessed with marriage and babies, and this has got to stop. Single people, listen to me. Marriage is a racket. Avoid it at all costs. Married people are just trying to suck you down into their hell. They have worked on this so hard that the LGBTQ community wants to get married so they can torture them too. If you must get married, wait until after you're 27. Before the age of 27, your brain is squishy. You can't make a decision that big. Marriage is a life sentence, and you have to choose your cellmate wisely. #1, say no to cousin love. #2, find an orphan. The rest of them come with families, and you don't want that. But this is really important. We have been taught to fear being alone. And I know so many people that stay in violent, abusive relationships because that they believe that being married, being with someone is so much better than being alone, that they allow themselves to be dehumanized and abused. It is far better to be alone and hang out with a cat than to spend day and night with a human being who makes you hate yourself. So don't let anyone in the world ever make you feel like you are less because you're not married or because you don't have children. If it's something that you want, great. And I know how hard it is in this society. So what I do is when people come up to me and ask me if I have kids, I show them a picture of my cat. They don't know what to do, and they walk away quietly. But I made the mistake of marrying a non-orphan. So my brother, what happened there? I've been in the Arab world one day too long. Refugee is one of 6 boys, and all 5 of his brothers have been shot, and all 5 have survived. They live in a refugee camp in Palestine. It's like, that's what happens. So all 5 have been shot, all 5 have survived. I picked the one that had never been shot, because I knew that if I ever got really angry, he could run and save himself. So unfortunately, I picked one that has a mother. And I feel really bad for her. I do. I genuinely feel bad for her. I've been married for 7 years, say mashallah. And she has never been allowed to visit him in the United States. She's never been able to get a visa because they have her on a terror watch list because I put her there. And it wasn't a false report because she terrorizes me. When I got married, I explained to my mother-in-law that I can't have kids. If I get pregnant, I will drop dead. And I remember watching this movie where the character couldn't have kids and she tried to get pregnant and she said, "I'd rather have a moment of joy than a lifetime of nothing." And I was like, I'll take the lifetime of nothing, thank you. Yes, thank you, lifetime. So every time my mother-in-law calls, she asks the same question. Are you pregnant? Is there a bundle in your oven? And I always tell her, I say, I have clearly told you, if I get pregnant, I will drop dead. And her response is, oh, just try once. Do not ask random people in the street if they are pregnant. Don't do it. This is a super bad habit in the Middle East. I was just in Palestine before I came to Abu Dhabi. People who shake my hand look at my stomach. And I have one of those bodies that could easily be 5 months pregnant year-round every year since I was 5. So they would look at my stomach and I'd be like, my eyes are up here. Don't ask people if they have kids. Don't ask people if they're pregnant. Unless you are possibly the mother or father, it is none of your goddamn business. You don't know who you're talking to. We really do think it's okay. The first question I always get is, are you married? And when I say yes, they go, really? And then the very next question is, do you have kids? Number 1, not your business. You do not know what any other human being goes through. Maybe this is someone who's been trying to get pregnant for 10 years and hasn't been able to. Maybe it's somebody who miscarried last night and you don't know it. Maybe they had a baby and that baby died. It is not your business whether people have children or not. It's time that you stop torturing women and treating them like cows and treat them like human beings. Unless it's yours, it's not your business. Which brings me to, I see you. Which brings me, by the way, when I'm done ranting and raving, we're gonna have a Q&A. I'm then gonna ignore everything you ask and continue to talk about whatever I feel like. Because I have a microphone and you don't. Jihad. Now we're gonna talk about the internet. I got my big break in television in 2010, and I was hired to be on this amazing, amazing new news show on MSNBC called Countdown with Keith Olbermann. And when they hired me, they didn't know I had cerebral palsy. So I showed up at the studio, like big hair, don't care, and flopping eyelashes, completely inappropriate for the news. So I went in, and they put me on a spinning, rolling chair. So I looked at the producer and I said, excuse me, can I have a more stable chair? And she looked at me and went, 5, 4, 3, 2, and we were doing it live. So I made my United States television debut sitting and spinning on a chair, desperately trying not to roll off screen. And I was livid, because I had spent 10 years trying to prove that people with disabilities could do the same, if not better job than their non-disabled counterparts, and I knew they would never invite me back. But not only did they invite me back, they made me a full-time contributor, and they taped down my chair. So when I got home, I did what any egomaniacal actress would do. I Googled myself, and I was horrified. People on the internet were playing a game of guess what's wrong with her. They were not used to seeing an image of disability, visible disability on television. The reason I use the term visible disability is because some disabilities are invisible. And the stigma, the fear, the hate, the non-acceptance of invisible disabilities is so prevalent that people are actually terrified to share their truth. Invisible disabilities is anything like chronic illness, fibromyalgia, depression, mental health issues. You don't judge me because I limp. Why judge someone because their brain doesn't function properly? Why do we treat visible disabilities and mental health issues so differently? Why can't we accept that it's not a choice and that anything that happens in your body is not a shame? Why do we teach people to be afraid to take medicine? I personally shun medicine, but that's a whole nother story. But we shouldn't make people be ashamed of doing whatever they need to do to be the best they can be. So I went online, and people were guessing what was wrong with me. And I don't actually think anything's wrong with me. I think, like I've said several times in this talk, disability is a normal part of life. I mean, I'm Majnoona, but that's a whole different thing. So people were guessing what was wrong with me. And they said, it's Botox gone wrong. She's drunk. Those were the nice people. The not nice people were saying, she looks like an honor killing gone wrong. Or poor terrorist, we should probably pray for her. And I read what was online, and I wondered, if I had grown up with social media, would I be on television? Or would the hate that I had sustained from the people around me make me go home and not go back on stage? And the next time they called me to be on TV, I thought of all the hate that I got. I thought of the people who called me fat. I thought of the people who said, her mouth is so annoying, I just want to pull it up. Or she's disgusting, I just can't take looking at her anymore. And I said, do I want to subject myself to that? Or do I just want to hang out with my cat, Beyonce? And what I decided was I had to go back on TV. I had to go back on TV for all the people who didn't have the strength that I did. I had to go out there and be loud and proud, because there is no shame in being disabled. And if you can't stand it, change the channel, change your life, and change your attitude, because nothing's going to change me. The world is broken, but we can fix it. We can fix it by saying no to violence worldwide and saying no to violence against women. We can fix it by saying no to being an internet troll and no to raising an internet troll. We were taught that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, and that is simply not true. Never be the person who causes another human being to harm themselves. If you feel the need to go online to post hate, Google cats on glass tables. You will thank me. And finally, say no to being silenced. Your voice is your weapon against injustice. I beg you, use it. My name is Maysoon Zayid, and if I can, Abu Dhabi, you can. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect.
Hello. I'm Catherine Corey, and I can.
Shaking a shaking hand. now I have to tell the joke. Now I have no choice.
Yeah.
Really quickly, and then we'll get into this
these
because
people think I was
you
making
shook my
fun of
hand.
you?
No, well, you were, but it's okay. That's what white people who are also brown do. It's a competition thing. No, I'm totally kidding. Do you guys know who Yasser Arafat is? Okay, so if you don't know him, go look him up later. He's dead. So I got to meet Yasser Arafat once, and I stood online and I waited my turn, and I stuck out my hand to shake his hand, and it went like this, and then he stuck out his hand, and it went like this, so I was going like this, he was going like this, security was going like this and like this. And then in the end, I never got to shake his hand. بس لحوس وجهي منيح منيح. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, sweetie.
It's Habibti in Abu Dhabi. Thank you.
Yeah, I know that.
احترام إذا
All
سمحتي.
Hi, everybody. This is a moment when you can try to ask Maysoon a question and hope that you get an answer and not another question. Right?
The answer is C.
What do you think? Anybody want to take a shot? Yes. There's a microphone coming.
It's such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much for coming all the way here to Abu Dhabi. I wanted to ask, what do you speak at home? Do you speak in Arabic or English?
Mostly I meow like a cat because I spend a lot of time with Beyonce. So my parents raised us to only speak Arabic until we went to kindergarten. And then I learned English in kindergarten. And then I spoke mostly English. And then I really did marry a refugee. So I have no choice but to speak in Arabic now. No. But I don't really speak Arabic. I speak Fallahi. بحكي بالشاف.
Right. So you don't know how to read and write Arabic.
I know how to read. I can't spell at all. دم كسر كسرني, and I don't know how to write at all, but I can read Arabic fluently. Yeah. Thank you, Facebook.
What else? Who has a question?
It can be anything. It doesn't have to be serious.
It can be anything.
Yellow.
Oh, his yellow shirt.
I know. He was the وسخ before, but it's okay. لا يا زلمة مش هيك.
So just a disclaimer, I'm the one who sent you a message yesterday on Facebook,
Oh
the crazy
my God,
message.
awesome.
Okay, so
I love that I picked on you. Now you're not scared to have a picture.
Yeah.
He sent me a message saying that he was afraid to take a picture of me because he doesn't know who's going to kill me first, the Mossad, the CIA, or my mom, and he doesn't want to get caught in the crossfire.
He should be writing for you.
So how do you manage to keep reinforcing your Palestinian identity in everything you do?
It's incredible. People ask me all the time, like, what works against you the most? Is it being disabled? Is it being a woman? In Hollywood, it's being Palestinian. There is nothing more controversial in America than fighting for Palestinian equality. So what keeps me loud and proud is I really am an equality junkie. I love equality. I'm about it regardless of gender. As I mentioned, orientation, which is like a risky topic wherever you go. But I grew up watching supremacy in action, watching Palestinians be denied equality simply because they followed a different faith. And it's just not something I can tolerate. So if I'm trading stardom for standing by Palestinians and being loud and proud and reinforcing day and night that it is not okay to massacre children in Gaza and call it self-defense when you're actually caging people, I can't. There's this amazing quote that I love, and it's silence is acceptance. If you're silent about this issue, you accept this issue. If you accept this issue, you're complicit. I cannot accept Palestinians being treated as subhuman. I cannot accept inequality, and I cannot accept corruption. So not only do I tackle the supremacy, I also call out the Palestinian Authority day and night on their corruption, because I won't give a pass to anyone who is committing an injustice in front of me. Also, I don't want people to get mad, but Palestinians are by far the hottest Arabs. How can I not be proud?
No, wait a minute.
I know, the Lebanese think they are, but it's just because of Sabra and Shatila. It's really us still.
I know, Jesus was born there. I know.
And he looked like me, not like Jared Leto, but we'll talk about that later.
What else? Another question?
There's two, one in the back and then the shawl.
Well, you don't need me, do you?
I'm sorry, Habibti, you have a job. Answer the next question, it'll be fine.
Yeah, okay.
But
Then we'll be even.
I want you to pretend to be me, so
Then
let
we'll
me
be
get the
even.
eyelash.
No, sit down.
Yes, hello.
No, yes.
I just wanted to thank you for being here, for sharing your personal story, for speaking to power, for speaking about social justice issues, and most importantly, for being so intimate with the audience about the struggles that you faced. What I'd like to ask you, and this is quite personal, is how did you overcome so much?
Thank you. I was so lucky. And there's so many people who were not born the way I was. I had the most incredible parents you could imagine. And when I was first born, my uncle told my father, leave her under a tree and let the monkeys raise her. If people see her, her cousins will never get married. And it was always a joke in my family that my father never spoke to my uncle again. And then the day of my wedding, he invited him just to mock him. It was very funny. I had parents who taught me a couple of different things. One was never to be ashamed. I was taught never to be ashamed. I was taken to every wedding. I was taken to every meal. I was told that it was okay if while I was using a spoon, a couple of pieces of rice fell. It wasn't a big deal. And some people, they have a non-disabled child and the child spills some milk or spills some cereal and they yell at them and they make them feel bad. My parents never made me feel bad about the things that I couldn't do. They taught me that I could, that I should try, and that if I couldn't, there was no shame in it. I was raised to be extremely proud. Also, I was raised one of 4 girls, and I cannot tell a lie. I think being in an all-woman family really empowered me because there was no competition. People would come up to my mother and be like, and my father, on the other hand, raised us exactly the same way he would sons. Every single one of us had to go to college. He trusted us. And because he put so much trust in us, we respected that trust and didn't violate it. I think that when you suffocate and stifle children and are constantly telling them what they shouldn't do and what they can't do and what not to do, they go and do it. But when you teach them right and then you give them trust, they won't break that trust. So I had trust, I was taught self-esteem and pride, and I had something called privilege. We cannot dismiss the fact that money cannot buy happiness, but it sure makes misery a lot more enjoyable. So I can afford to pay for yoga, and I can afford to have someone wash my hair. I can afford to have someone cook my food. I can afford to compensate for the things that I can't do. And it would be dishonest for me not to say that having privilege and having opportunity helped me to get to where I am. Now, overcome is a really interesting word. I'll have cerebral palsy forever. There is no cure. I mean, sometimes when they dip me in the Dead Sea, I feel better for about a week, but it comes back. And it's not that I overcame it, it's that I accept it. And part of accepting it is very, very faith-based for me. I really do believe that all things from God are great. And I do believe that this is a gift and that when I was born and the doctor who delivered me was drunk, and I became someone who had cerebral palsy. I do think that I was chosen to do this so that I could go across the world and change the way people view disabilities. When I do stand-up comedy in a place like, Jordan or Cairo or even Abu Dhabi, a lot of people have never seen a functional disabled person. And I'm not angry, I'm not resentful about the fact that I have a disability. I believe it's part of who I am. I believe it's part of the power that I have. And like I said, I believe I have hasanat, I'm going to heaven, so that's pretty good too.
What else? Talk to me.
Well,
Yes.
there was the girl in the shawl first. Okay, good. And then we'll do
First you, and then this young woman, yes?
And then finally the guy in the red hat.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Of course, boss.
I always feel bad. Like I want them to have a chance because Allahum ba'alam shو بيصير بكرة هذا
Don't
Trump
worry about
بيحب
it. Don't worry
nuclear
about
war
it.
مش
Habibi,
nuclear
we're good.
war.
We're good.
راح يحطني في
Thank you so
المخيم.
much for this wonderful talk and being here with us. It's just lovely to be entertained, but also obviously listen about those important issues. What I wanted to ask you is how your life has changed since you became famous. You've become a...
I'm not famous yet. I'm still on the Z list.
You might be, yeah, maybe not quite yet, but, I suppose that depends who you ask. But also, you've been on TV, national TV, you are a well-known person traveling the world. How has your life changed? And also, how do you feel about your celebrity? Your being a person that I would imagine that a lot of people recognize you. I've known you for some time now, so I know that in my world you are, a well-known person.
Well, it's quite incredible because it's true. I get recognized all the time, and it always freaks me out because I'm a woman, right? So I'm a woman walking by myself. I flew 280 days last year for my job. 280 days. And 90% of the time I'm by myself. This is not an invitation to stalkers or murderers, but 99%. And people will come up to me and they'll be like, oh my God, and I'll be like, ah! So the first thing that happens when people recognize me is I'm always terrified. I'm like, what? What did I do? Why are you here? And the other thing that's really interesting is when I became a comedian, I became a comedian because I didn't see people on American television who looked like me. And who I did see was a comedian named Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor was a black man, and he had MS, and he shook, and he eventually used a wheelchair in his career. And I saw him, and I was like, oh, I can do that. And then I'll be in movies, and I'll be on TV. So I became a comedian, and when I became a comedian, the fact that I had a disability was not a big deal. It simply wasn't. I was on stage in clubs. And what kind of intrigued people was that I was a Muslim woman post 9/11 performing in New York City. So I became known because of my culture, not my ability. In 2013, when I did the TED Talk, which eventually became the most viewed TED Talk of 2014, that's when my life really changed. And that's when I realized that I had so much power, and it's the Spider-Man thing. With great power comes great responsibility. And I changed who I was because I don't want to bring harm to anyone anymore. And I used to be a lot more flippant with my language. I've gotten deported from countries for saying certain things. And I didn't take into account that, like, when I was being free and uncensored, my producers were getting thrown in jail. Or when I was making a pedophilia joke, someone in my audience had lived through that, and it wasn't funny to them. And I became much more responsible with my language, but I also became much more fearless. I think up until the TED Talk, although I did accept my disability, it was something I tried to downplay and tried to hide because I knew how much fear surrounded disability. After the TED Talk was translated into 41 languages. So I get translated into 41 languages, I get over like 50 million hits, and I start having people write me. And everybody heard what they wanted to hear. So Muslim girls were like, oh my God, there's finally a Muslim who's like loud and proud and defending us all and talking about the fact that we are equal and that a lot of what makes us unequal is not the Quran, but actually patriarchy. And that I went out there and I was like challenging the stereotypes and challenging the myths. So Muslim girls were like, I could be in the arts, or I can go to my parents and say, I'm not going to marry my cousin. This is the reason I'm not going to do it. And there were live girls that reached out to me saying, I lived in fear and now I feel empowered. Or I'm very much into making sure that we never judge women based on what they wear. I don't think we ever should, and I never will. But the other thing that happened was people with disabilities reached out to me, and I have letter after letter that said, I was going to kill myself, and then I saw you. And I realized that the lack of positive images was actually causing people to hate themselves, was causing parents to fear and abuse their children. And I also realized how lucky I was to have my parents. And I realized that most people don't have what I have. And I knew that for some people, I was what they call Ohana. There's this Disney movie called Lilo and Stitch. And Ohana means family. But it's not the family you're born with, it's the family that you gather. And, I can't have biological children, but I'm the mother of many worldwide, and I'm so blessed to be able to give them the love, the guidance, and strength that they lacked otherwise.
You're here. You had a question. Yes.
There's a mic coming. Also, we need someone after the guy in the red hat. Someone needs to ask me about Beyonce the cat because I forgot to tell the story and it's so good. You and the cat. Never tap a mic. Never. It kills them. It's so bad. Go ahead.
First of all, welcome to Abu Dhabi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your interesting talk. My question is somehow generic because I've always been curious about it. It's regarding the topics that some stand-up comedians choose and eventually they become the most successful. So why are topics such as politics or that are related to Islam are usually the ones that are most the hit? So can you give us your opinion as a stand-up comedian?
So my opinion as a stand-up comic, and also it was really cool here at NYUAD. I also got to teach a stand-up comedy workshop and a class on laughter and a class on words. I think what makes people successful is universal topics, things that everyone can relate to. I used to hate to talk about marriage because I don't want anyone to think that a measure of success is being married, because it's not. But the reality is, talking about marriage is a topic that everyone gets. Politics tend to be universal. Having a crazy mother-in-law tends to be universal. So the more relatable and the more universal your topics are, the more people will relate to you, because that's what stand-up comedy is about. You want to feel like the person on stage is your friend and that they're having a conversation with just you. So the challenge for me was taking topics that were super foreign to people and making them universal. So when I talk about being a Muslim woman in America, sometimes I'm literally the first Muslim woman they think they've ever seen. And I say think because, like I said, you don't know, and 90% of the doctors in America are Muslim. You've probably had one at some point, unless you've never been sick. But I needed to figure out how to make it universal. So anything I talked about being Palestinian, being Muslim, or being disabled, I took it and made it universal. And I think a good example is the handicap parking. Almost every country I've gone to has handicap parking, and there's a story behind it. Either people who are not disabled park in it, and I'm like, God is great, you're next. Or, the spots are empty and they're just I wish I was disabled. And I took something that everyone could relate to and brought it back to a way to empower people with disabilities, to make us we're better than you, we get everything, you're jealous, because like I said, there's so much fear, but I wanted to kind of flip that on its head and make it be like, it's not what you think. It's not as bad. Same thing with Islam. Like the way that I talk about Islam, I'm not going out there to preach. I'm talking about the role that it plays in my life. Stand-up comedy is personal. There's no way for me to separate myself from my faith. So I have to include it in the stories that I tell. And I find a way to make it universal. And this is a talk, right? So the talk has some really serious points. When I do stand-up comedy, it's pure jokes. My only goal on stage is to make people laugh. That's my one and only goal. I'm not there to preach. I'm not there, to convert anyone. If they do, that's good, because again, I like hasanat, but it's not my goal. And if I ever find that my goal is anything other than making people laugh, I'll leave. I tend to teach people just by the mere fact that I am who I am, but it's not my goal. And the other thing that makes people laugh all the time is people falling down. Anytime you see someone fall down, as long as they're not dead, you laugh. And sometimes you laugh until you realize they're dead. But like falling down is a universal funny.
I'm glad you said that about teaching, because I have this feeling about you that you are kind of a born teacher, and I'm so grateful to you for spending time in our classrooms. The Arts Center, when they bring an artist here for a residency, they intersect with the academic program so wonderfully. And so you were in 3.
I guest taught 2 classes, and then I taught a 3-hour stand-up comedy workshop. It was magical. It was a really good group.
And they're very
Usually
lucky.
There's one loser in every single group, and you have to know that one of them will never be funny and they'll never succeed. And you don't really want to tell them, but I'm super truthful, so I'm just like, this is not for you. Maybe try poetry. It does, because poetry is never good, so you can't really be bad at it. And my group last night was all amazing. They had a lot of potential. It was
great.
Cool. Can we get the guy in the red cap?
The gentleman in the baseball cap there, yes.
Right.
Mine is running
hi,
out. Bad things are happening.
I have 2 questions.
I'm good? No. Somebody carry me quick. What? 2 questions?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. First,
I don't know about that.
He's been waiting a long
I'm
time.
hoping that the second one is about Beyonce the cat, but go ahead.
the first one's
No.
about Beyonce the cat. I want to know how old is he or she? And
Why would I name a boy Beyonce? I like that.
I don't know.
No, I like that. That is very modern thinking. There's no such thing as girl-boy names. You have Nadal and Fida. And Beyonce could be a man. You're right.
Yeah, why not? And the second question is, I'm taking a class with Professor Catherine called Migration. So my question is, how was moving to the U.S., how did it feel when your parents moved from Palestine to the U.S.? And have you ever thought of migrating back to Palestine?
I'm bicontinental. I live, like I said, I actually live in an airplane because literally I spent 280 days on a plane. And by the way, that makes not having children so easy because I genuinely hate babies. I'm just saying, some advice you don't want to hear for any parents in the audience: if you fly with your child, sedate it. Sedate it. It's not really drugging it. It makes it less painful for them and less painful for us. I split time between 2 places. Legally, the occupiers won't allow me to stay in Palestine for more than 3 months, which is why I do the 3 months a year thing, kind of spread out. But I have a home in Palestine. I have a home in New Jersey. I feel equally tied to both of those places. I like the food in New Jersey better, and I like the wind in Palestine better. So I'm tied to both of those places. My parents are interesting. My father migrated to America in 1959 with $80 in a dream, and he built an empire. My mom was born American. My grandfather had already been in America since 1936. So when she was born American, and she was raised in Palestine at a time where they didn't have schools for girls past the 6th grade. So in the 6th grade, she was sent to live with nuns. And she was a Muslim Palestinian girl raised by nuns and taught in French. And she's incredible because when she throws a slipper, it turns a corner, goes up the stairs, smacks you in the back of the head, bounces back onto her foot. She's like a magical creature. We were always Palestinian. It didn't matter that we were born and raised in America. We were always Palestinian first. We still have, we're not refugees. We didn't run, thank God. We stayed put. That's how I taught my husband. I'm like, we were brave. I hope you like your camp. But we grew up like literally constantly saying "Sanirja, Sanirja, Sanirja." Like the mindset of a Palestinian is always that we want to go back home. And it doesn't matter that I was born in the USA. For me, Palestine is my home. But I can't deny the American side of me. So when I see the hate that Muslims are receiving in America, when we're told we don't belong and that our beliefs are contrary to the American system, I get very protective of the fact that I am American. I was born in the USA. And I cannot deny that the fact that it plays a huge role in who I am today. It's the reason that I'm educated. It's one of the big reasons that I have privilege and I have power is because I have that American passport. You don't get to go to 280 countries without that beautiful blue passport. So I'm equally living, kind of one foot in each world, even though it's not good to fudge.
I hope your other question was about Beyonce.
No, he asked 2 questions.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask
Did you ask the second one?
Yeah, I did. That was the second. I'd love to know more about Beyonce, though.
Please.
So I had a cat named Lucy for 17 years. And then you won't believe what she did. She left and went to heaven. So I was really angry, and I said I would never, ever, ever get a cat again. And then 2 years ago on my birthday, my refugee walked in the door, and he was carrying a 10-week-old cat with nothing else, like no food, no litter box, nothing. And he walked in, and he held out this cat that was like, meow. And he said, "'Cause you're so old and you can't have children, I bought you this cat." And so I ended up with Beyonce the cat, and I got like super attached immediately because she's gorgeous. And you can go to Maysoon.com, Maysoon.com, and she has her own social media page where you can like and comment on her photographs. You can also email me. You can see all the videos I've ever done. I have a live content in Arabic and English. Of course, the TED has been translated into every language in the world. So if there's someone in your family that needs educating on equality and justice, you can send it to them in their native language. But I take Beyonce the cat with me wherever I go. And it's really funny. She can't come to Abu Dhabi because of the quarantine. But in America, I literally carry her in a backpack and I travel with her. And people are not used to seeing cats. So the first question I get is always, what kind of dog is she? And I'm like, the cat kind. And then in security, you have to take her out of the backpack, and then they wipe down her hands like a little terror kitty. And so I don't want her to be scared, so I'm like, Beyonce, don't worry, mama, Beyonce. And everyone online starts grabbing their phones, and they're like, Beyonce, where's Beyonce? It's so funny. And yes, Beyonce is a girl, because otherwise she wouldn't be able to sing all the single ladies, don't get married to your cousin.
Okay, I think we're going to stop there.
I think we're going to have to stop there.
I'm begging you to go online and watch the TED Talk, because it's exquisite. It really is. And I want to say that this has been so much fun, and I'm so glad you're here this week. So give it up for Maysoon Zayid.